The following program contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised. You are listening to Zeitgeist Lab Collections from Itchy Grundle Podcast. In Collection 3, Brian and Alex metaphorically traveled north to Canada to investigate the Canadian content that seems to be pervasive everywhere. This is Episode 8, Mint Records.
So I'm really upset about this episode already because I try to stay off our Twitter, especially on recording day, but I happened to look at it today and I'm very worried about what's in store from the Grundle for us today. There's a lot of topics there and I think I'm going to get canceled or I'm going to have all the wrong takes. So I'm just starting by saying that. I just want to put that out there right now that I'm coming into this very anxious.
Well, I mean, at least you're not tweeting and further alienating our audience with poop talk.
Is that alienating our audience?
I think so. I mean, you're the only one that's liking it. Seems to like it.
I feel like I've kept the poop talk to a minimum from our account.
Yeah, but then you retweet it on our account from your account. And it's just all I see.
I mean, you tweeted about poop the other day.
Yeah, just one time. Mocking you.
That was mocking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Look, I mean, ever since our plop season episode, that's the only place my mind can go, is straight to poop. And then I get accused by my wife and by Coop from the Weird Parents podcast. And so then I just got to double down on doing nothing but, poop talk.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
You don't think that's the right brand for me?
I just don't want to. I just don't want to drag it into our podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair enough. I know what we can talk about off the front here, right before we reach down and itch that sweaty little spot in our Grundle, is that this week, by the time this comes out, I think this episode that you're listening to right now first comes out on the 29th, we will officially be in our second year as a podcast because the 26th marks the anniversary of our episode 0.
Oh, I mean, I know we've been on Twitter for a year now.
Yes, we have been. And our official, episode 0, which I guess is our first episode because numbers make no sense, was on the 26th. So we made it a whole year.
Yeah, we made it a whole year. That's kind of surprising.
Is it? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably.
We've survived 3 seasons so far.
Mm-hmm. When we started, did you think we would even get through the first season, or did you think we would just give up after a few episodes?
No, I think we'd make it through the first one because we had planned it out pretty well, or you had planned it out really well. I never really thought about stopping though.
Right. No, me either. Well,
so yeah, I'm glad we made it this far.
Yeah, here's to another year.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's just fucking reach into that Grundle and see what these people want to hear me talk about, because it's not pretty. Oh, and before we get to the Grundle, I also want to thank everyone who listened to our Great Big Sea episode. Because of all the huge Great Big Sea fans we've got out there. Last month we were 78th in Canadian Apple Podcasts for podcasts in the performing arts category. So that means something, I guess. I don't know, but it's all because of the Great Big Sea episode. So
it is.
I mean, that's been our biggest episode this season.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's our biggest episode
this season, and our third biggest of all time, actually. So,
wow,
people love that Great Big Sea talk.
I guess. All right, time to scratch the old Grundle here. First, we have Gabe Sluice.
The sluice is loose.
I blew my nose this morning and my boogers were highlighter yellow. What's that all about? I don't know, man. You might want to see a doctor about that.
When it's yellow, that means it's like an infection, right?
It could be. If it's highlighter yellow, that's pretty bright.
That is pretty bright. Well, okay. We're nothing if not official doctors, so let's just see what Google has to say. highlighter, yellow
Try to
snot.
help him out here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's come to us for. What would cause neon yellow snot? So we're going to Cora here, an absolute authority on all things that could be asked online. That means you have a terrible sinus infection. When you're starting to recover, the mucus comes out and it is bright. Blow it out when you can. After a day or so, you'll find the color becomes much lighter. The reason for this is because your body's white cells went to battle to kill the germs. The germs died, and so did the white cell warriors. This is what produces the color. You should be using a Vicks inhaler or just steam inhaler to help your sinuses clear out. You can get a steam inhaler at a drugstore for not much more than $40, or just hop into a shower and let hot water flow all over your head and face. So that's what's up with that, Gabe.
Or drink a lot of tea, a lot of hot tea.
Hot tea.
A lot of hot tea with some red pepper flakes and some honey.
Oh, really? I would
That's
do
for
like
the
it.
sinuses.
I do like an echinacea tea because that's supposed to help when you're sick. The red pepper flakes would definitely help. I guess you're not going for taste there, though, right? You're just going for function because that sounds awful.
You can't taste anything.
Oh, okay.
You have sinus infection.
I
I get them all the time. I mean, maybe once a year.
Yeah, I had one recently. I could still taste things. Not as well, that's for sure.
Yeah, I lose all senses or taste.
Okay. All right, well, Gabe, thank you for the question. Hopefully that helps you out.
Yeah. Get some hot tea in you. All right. Next we have Butter Muffin. He wants to know if a woodchuck could chuck wood, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck? Very difficult question.
It is.
I went with 11.
11. So, you had a pre-planned answer?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, I would imagine he would chuck as much wood as a woodchuck could if a woodchuck could chuck wood.
Which it could.
It would probably chuck enough wood to blow down an igloo.
That's true. I like how he asked that one backwards.
Did he? So read it again?
If a woodchuck could chuck wood, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck?
Ah, okay, you're right. It is backwards. Well, thank you, Butter Muffin. Okay, so you took care of the two easy ones at first. Now we're getting into the two that I feel like I'm going to drop nothing but controversy.
Uh-oh. And then we have two suggestions from Cheryl Girl 68, who I think it's her first time, her first experience with the Grundle.
Yeah, her first visit to the Grundle.
She wants us to talk about Taylor's version.
I'll let you start.
I don't get it. I feel like people who are obsessed with Taylor Swift can do a lot better. No offense. I know people who are obsessed with Taylor Swift.
So what do you mean a lot better? Just like a lot better musically, or just a lot better with their obsessions in general?
You can idolize someone better.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people out there.
Right.
Rob Halford, for example.
Who?
Rob Halford, Judas Priest.
Oh, okay. But I mean, that's like, those are two different things, right? You could get there, but there's got to be like, what's the stepping stone? Like, what's the gateway out of Taylorland?
I don't know. I'd say Phoebe Bridgers, but that's going in an equally bad direction.
Yeah, no, I think that's the wrong way for sure. Have you listened to Red Taylor's version?
No. I don't. Why is it Taylor's version? Shouldn't it? I mean, she's a solo artist, solo singer songwriter. Shouldn't all her albums be her version?
Well, I think the whole thing is whatever record label she was with.
I'm sure there's an explanation for it, but I don't really care.
Okay. Well, you said you didn't get it, so I was going to try to explain it. She's taking her songs back, right? Like,
okay,
it's a money grab. That's okay. That's where I know I'm going to get canceled because I think she's coming at it from a purely greedy thing. It's like, oh, I want my songs back so I can make the money. Like, once you record the songs and they're out there, they're out there. Who cares who owns them? Especially when you're like someone like Taylor Swift. You have millions of dollars, so what are you trying to gain by doing this? If this were a smaller band and it was like the only album they put out and it was relatively successful and they just don't own it anymore, then yeah, fuck yeah, I'd be like, okay, what can we do to try to re-record this and get some more, more money because we fucking wrote these songs. But Taylor Swift is already like a fucking millionaire. So I don't get it either. I just think it's greed.
Yeah, I don't get it.
And then this fucking 10-minute version of one of the songs, like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm not a fan of anyone that doesn't write their own songs.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a sign of weakness if you can't write your own music.
But you liked NSYNC.
When I was 5.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel like her version we should have heard that first.
What does that mean? What do you mean we should have heard that first? It's the same songs.
But her version implies that she wrote all of them herself.
Oh, right? Okay. I think it just implies that it's the version she owns, I guess.
Oh, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really care. I feel like if you're a big fan of Taylor Swift, you can do a lot better, and I believe in you.
Mm-hmm. You believe? Okay, that's good to kind of instill that belief. And just one final thought: former guest and friend of the pod, Hunter DeBlanc, did retweet someone saying that if you want a good 10-minute song, to check out Constantine by Something Corporate. No, Constantine by Something Corporate, and this 10-minute version of whatever by Taylor Swift can just get fucked. Get out of here.
Sure. Is she doing that for all of her albums?
The first 6 that came out under that first record label. I think this was the second one. I think she did Fearless earlier this year, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow.
So I can't wait to hear what it sounds like when a 35-year-old Taylor Swift re-records Teardrops on My Guitar.
Yeah, I don't know. If writing songs is so hard, then don't do it. Don't get someone else to write them for you. That's my thing.
Well, what about Elton John? Like, he wrote the music but not the words. Is that okay? Like, as long as you're doing part of it, or is that also bad?
That's fine. We're not all accomplished with words.
Okay. So as long as you're writing part of it, you don't necessarily have to be doing all the work.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's a unique working relationship.
Right.
I didn't know that until I saw the movie about it, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh.
I assumed he wrote the lyrics.
No, absolutely not. All right, well, let's move on to this next controversial topic, unless there was something else you wanted to say about Taylor Swift.
Just do better.
Amen.
And I don't mean any offense by that either. I know we know people that love Taylor Swift. But
right. No, absolutely not. And Taylor Swift's not, to me, in my opinion anyway, she's not even that bad. And Red is actually my favorite Taylor Swift album, but that's not the point. You can do a lot better than being obsessed with her. Listen to the songs on the radio, check it out on Spotify every now and then if you're so inclined, but just to get on your knees at the altar of Taylor Swift over everything she does is just, it's wrong, and you can do better.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying
it's wrong.
There's so much more out there. There's so much other music out there.
Great Big Sea, for example.
That's one option if you want to go backwards.
Great Big Sea is worse than Taylor Swift?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Okay, Alex. Great Big Sea is seriously one of the worst things I've ever heard.
Okay, can you at least name one band or piece of music that's worse than Great Big Sea? Surely it's not the worst. What about that new Turnstile album or whatever?
Oh no, the worst. I think the new Kid Rock song is way worse
than Great Big Sea.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't heard the new Kid Rock song, but I'll take your word for it. You're probably right. But that's mainly because Great Big Sea is probably in like the top 30 or 40 bands of all time.
Turns out it's pretty bad, but I might have to go see them in Milwaukee. All right. Their second topic from Shirley is Freed Britney. You can go first on this one. I don't know what's controversial or.
I don't know. I just don't. I guess this one, my take isn't so much controversial, other than I just don't know the right way to talk about it. It just seems like no matter what anyone says, it's again, this is a rabid fan base. This is a more worthy cause because certainly no one should be forced to live under like a conservatorship or lose their bodily or mental autonomy. But it just seems like this rabid fan base, if you're not part of it and you try to talk about it, then they try to like invalidate whatever you have to say. So it's more like I just would rather say nothing. But even that's a bad thing, right? Because just like within the last couple days, Britney Spears has been like all over Christina Aguilera for just choosing to say nothing about this at some press junket or red carpet event or something. So like, and again, silence is complicity, right? And I'm not necessarily saying that's wrong either, but I just don't know how to talk about it and feel like I'm appeasing all of the things that need to be appeased.
Yeah, so I think Freed Britney is a rare moment of justice in the world. And I'm happy for her. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much. That's all there is to say. I think. That's all you really need to say.
Right.
I mean, that's all there is to it. Yeah.
Are you one of the people who followed it really closely?
No, I didn't follow it back. Not really. I know her sister is like a piece of shit for supporting their dad.
I think I saw something about that a few months ago or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I know her sister's not great.
All I know about her sister is that she was on all that. Somehow.
Yeah, it was on the wrong side of that one.
Look, familial relationships are tough, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not saying she's on the right side, but it's if her parents are as bad as everything leads us to believe, then she may be under their grip in another manner, right? Like.
Maybe
it's hard to kind of unpack a family dynamic.
True.
And see, I feel like just even saying that, or like asking for like some acknowledgement that maybe she is wrong because she is, under the watchful and manipulative eye of her parents, is just something that would get me like. There's a fan base that would be all over me for even implying that. I suppose. Maybe I'm just too cynical.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like two white guys talking about this is just really, we gotta I feel like Shirley has it out for us. Making us talk about this.
Look, I'm Colombian, so I'm not white, but thank you for lumping me into the privilege.
You're welcome. That was revealed on the lab experiment. Now we revealed it.
Right. If you want to find out more about my Colombian heritage, head on over to patreon.com/zglabpod.com. For $3 a month, you can hear me eat a McRib in front of a microphone and talk about Colombia, among other things.
Yeah, I listened back to that one. That was a weird time. I still don't know if
I did not listen back to it specifically because I think I will cringe too much or be too embarrassed. So I listened back just enough to be able to cut out the teaser and leave it there.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the entirety of the Grundle today.
All right, well, that at least provided us with some content because I don't really know what's going to happen next. We're here to talk about Mint Records. It's a Canadian record label. Our executive producer, Pan Blurry, suggested we talk about it. It's something that I've heard mentioned on our parent podcast a number of times. But it's also something I just have not had the capacity or time to really research a lot in the last few weeks. So I'm hoping that maybe I'm going to get surprised and you are just like an expert on mint records, Brian. So what do you know about mint records?
I know absolutely nothing about mint records.
Excellent. Okay. So were you familiar with them?
On the playlist you gave me, I've heard of 2 of those bands.
Okay.
Out of 20.
Mm-hmm. So what I know about Mint Records is they're from Vancouver. They this year are celebrating their 30th anniversary, so they've been around since 1991. They have over 200 releases, and I think that basically covers what I know about Mint Records.
Yeah. I didn't. So did you listen to the playlist, right?
Right. So I thought that maybe the best way to try to dive into Mint Records and get like at least a taste, because obviously it's a little bit different. We've talked about a record label before, but we did so over 19 weeks, one album at a time. And so now I'm trying to unpack a record label with a much more broad history than Drive-Thru Records and do that in one episode. So I thought, okay, well, let's find some sort of compilation. And they had this, they put out an album in 2011 called Team Mint 20. It was just basically their greatest hits. It was like they picked their 20 favorite songs that they've released and put them out on this compilation. It's out of print, but I put together a playlist on Spotify. So that's kind of that's our starting point for Mint Records.
I wasn't sure if you, made that on your own or if that was like a proper release.
No, yeah, I went and found it on Discogs, and then they obviously list all the tracks, but it's not on Spotify, so I just put the playlist together.
Yeah, so I didn't like a lot of this.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, did you like this?
I actually quite enjoyed it. Yeah, this is not what I was expecting because, so like I said, I don't know anything about Mint Records, but where I've heard of them before, even before Pan Blurry's suggestion, is I've heard Sam and Josiah talk about them. And so when they talk about a record label, and again, they're talking about artists I've never heard of, and it's all very Canadian. So I just think, okay, if it's Mint Records and it's a record label these guys are talking about, it's probably kind of in the same vein as a Drive-Thru or a Vagrant or Fueled by Ramen. And this is not that.
Oh, that's what you thought it was going to be?
Like just more of a pop punk type record label, or even something more like Fat Records or something. So, a little bit different. But this is not what I was expecting at all.
No, this was all like twee, indie rockish.
Right.
Some punky indie punk, some more scrappy bands towards the end of the comp, which I enjoyed. I had never heard Nardwar's band before this.
Which one is his?
The Evaporators.
Okay.
You know who Nardwar is, right?
Again, it's a name I'm familiar with. I believe he's a journalist or something, correct?
Yeah, he's watch one of his interviews with there's so many. I can't even begin to talk about Nardwar. I can't even begin to explain Nardwar. Really hoping you'd heard of him.
No, I remember Sam talking about him once on their podcast, but it was just kind of went over my head because I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, so I took notes for every song.
Great. Well, let's just start going through it, and as I remember things, I'll try to jump in. So yeah. Again, clearly we know little to nothing about this record label, and maybe that'll change. I saw there's a book about the record label, which I wish I had known that before tonight, because maybe I would have read at least part of that. But too late for that shit. So the first song here is a song called "Sirens" by the Pack AD.
Yeah, my only notes for that one is not good.
Not good. Okay. Well, okay. How about Gold Star Swimmer by Hot Panda?
That one sounded like Spoon. Ew, I wrote. I don't know if you've heard Spoon before, but Spoon is not a good band.
I've heard one Spoon song. This is going to be great content because I'm now listening to this playlist on my phone right next to my mic just to try to remember these songs. Yeah, the only place I've heard Spoon was I had to look it up, but the song that they sing at the very end of Shameless while the Tesla's burning is a Spoon song, apparently.
All right, and then next we have Vancouver.
Yeah, Distance by Vancouver. I like this one.
Yeah, it sounds a lot of this comp sounds really dated, but in a good way.
Yeah, and what I do appreciate about it is there's a lot. Again, I don't really know. You said like twee, independent, like indie type stuff, and I guess that's the best way to describe it as a whole. But there's like a lot more female representation than I was expecting, which is good because again, I thought it would be more like a pop punk, all dudes type compilation.
Yeah, there are a lot of female vocals on here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next we have Anime Eyes by the Awkward Stage, which that's another one I liked.
Yeah, that one was all right. Again, I wrote that it's kind of the same in that it's dated in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we have Give It a Night by Bella.
Yeah, I wrote that this is like just middle of the road indie rock.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I think that's another way to just kind of describe a lot of these songs. You said you didn't like a lot of it, which I understand that. It doesn't surprise me. To me, I would probably say I didn't like a lot of it, but there was nothing here that I really didn't like. It's there.
A lot of it's just middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Just inoffensive indie pop kind of stuff.
Right. Okay, then we have Jarhan by Immaculate Machine.
I kind of like that one.
I really like that one. I think that's the best one on there.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I think it's got like a cool melody. I really like the end where it's like, it's all in your hands. Like, it's just, I thought that was a really good one. That's probably, for me, one of the standouts.
Okay.
Okay, Hypothesis by Novalero.
I wrote that one is annoying. I felt like it was doing too much with like the horns and.
Oh no, this is good. I like this. No, I like this one.
Yeah, it's got like the horns and the piano. I thought it was doing too much.
Yeah, what I will say is I feel like pretty much every song on here is very derivative of something else. So you compared one to Spoon. Almost anything on here I can compare to something else, like, and very closely. Like, so I mean, there's nothing like standout original to me on it.
Yeah, I think when the songs get like punkier and like sort of punchier, that's kind of when I sort of like my ears perk up.
Okay. Pure Evil by Piano. I'm not sure.
Piano. I wrote that's the most annoying band name, and it sounds like most of the other bands so far, which is uninteresting as fuck.
Okay. All right. How about Brother by The Organ?
I wrote the organ doesn't have an organ. The song goes nowhere.
Okay. Half Empty Halls by The Evaporation. This is the one you had mentioned before. Yeah. Oh, this was a good one. I like this one.
Yeah, I wrote.
Sorry, you wrote what?
Nardwar's band is fun.
Yeah, no, this is really good. I like that one. And that's kind of closer to more like what I was thinking a lot of the songs would sound like.
Yeah.
Okay, how about Fresh Horses by the Buttless Chaps?
Okay. I wrote the Buttless Chaps are cowards for not being called the Assless Chaps.
Okay. Bad. I like this one. This is another one I liked. It was very... it sounds like, again, it's very derivative of The Cure, but and not in a bad way necessarily.
Oh, there was one that did sound like The Cure.
Yeah. I think it was this one. Come on, sing, goddammit.
No, not this one.
Well, maybe it doesn't necessarily sound like The Cure. It sounds like Robert Smith singing, though.
Okay, yeah, I can hear that a little bit.
So, yeah, maybe not necessarily like The Cure, but like Robert Smith. Okay, City You Live In Is Ugly by Young and Sexy.
I wrote another bad band name and generic indie song.
Okay. Beautiful Slide by Mark Kleiner.
I wrote, there was another song, but it wasn't noteworthy at all. I knows that one.
Okay.
I wasn't like writing notes when it was on because it just kind of fell into the background and I just got caught up doing something else, so I didn't write anything to that one.
Okay. I Promise You Thomas by Volumizer.
I liked this one.
I like this one too, and I think a lot of it is just the rhyme of Promise and Thomas.
No, I didn't even catch that.
Okay. But no, it's a good song, but yeah, that was what stuck out to me was...
Yeah, I wrote that it's kind of punkish and one of the only highlights here.
Okay. All right, Letter from an Occupant by the New Pornographers.
They're the only other band I've heard of. They actually suck. So I could have gone the rest of my life avoiding that band, and I would have been okay.
Okay. It strikes me out that I just, like, I listen to this playlist, especially, like, everything through, probably, like, the first half a lot, but now I can't remember them, so that's got to mean something. Okay, Diamond Head by Huevos Rancheros.
This one's badass.
Okay, was this...
I like that it was instrumental.
That's right, okay, I was going to say it was instrumental. That was good, and I like the instrumental touch, for sure.
Yeah, it was sick.
Okay, Edmonton by Carolyn Mark.
I wrote the Solo Ladies song is okay, I guess.
I really liked it.
Carolyn Mark, I think her name is. Yeah,
Carolyn Mark. And I thought it was really good. It, to me, reminded me a lot of Fleetwood Mac, like some of their like 70s stuff, like specifically like Rumors type era. But I thought it was really good. I was shocked when I looked and saw that it was just like a singer-songwriter. Because again, I did not picture this as being like a singer-songwriter type album. And it was just like a very good ballad about opening for someone that you then I don't know. I don't want to guess what the relationship was about, but I liked it.
Nice.
Buddy Holly Convention by the Smugglers.
This is the best one.
Okay, so what makes you think that?
It's just really punky and I don't know, just really upbeat.
Yeah, I really like this one too. And you know who our guest is this week?
We have a guest. Oh, is it someone in this band?
Yep, it's the lead singer of the Smugglers.
Oh no, shit! That's awesome. I'm so glad. I'm so fucking glad. I said this is the best song.
Right? Yeah. So I wasn't sure if you were just saying that because you knew. Or okay, good. No, it's a great song. I really like it.
What are the fucking odds of that though? Like, here's this comp I don't like for the most part, and and I don't even know if we have a guest or not, and then all of a sudden you kind of spring that on me. And
well, I mean, we messaged about it the other day, but it's fine if you don't remember. But yeah, I don't think I told you what band they were from. But yeah, the lead singer of the Smugglers will be joining us later.
Awesome, yeah. Shout out to that guy.
And then we've got Ms. Lefebvre, I don't know, whatever, by a band called Now.
Yeah, it's also kind of punky, which is also good.
Yeah, I like that one as well. Kind of weird with like the little spoken word thing at the end, but it's forgivable. And then finally, New York City by Cub.
Yeah, this is like scrappy indie punk. I wrote, I wish more of these bands were like this.
Yeah, no, it was really good. I definitely want to go check out specifically Cub, the Smugglers. Again, I don't know why these things are buried at the bottom of the comp because these last 4 or 5 were the ones I just never got to because it is a long comp and I've known about this for a while, so I keep trying to get into it, but I just never made it to the end. And then I was like, well, I've got to at least make it to Buddy Holly convention because we're going to be talking to someone from this band. And so I finally finished, and I was like, holy shit, like the comp really ends strongly.
Yeah, it does. Like, the last 3 songs are excellent.
Mm-hmm. And I would, from my standpoint, I would say the last 4 songs. But yeah, I don't know why they're kind of buried at the very back.
Mm. Yeah, that is weird. Yeah, I'm so fucking glad that the guy who made the best song on the comp, in my opinion, is actually going to be on the pod.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting.
Seriously, like, for like just considering how little I liked of this, like, what are the odds?
Right. Well, I mean, 1 in 20, right?
Yeah. It could have been someone from Piano.
Right. I could have gotten the new pornographers on here.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's a big get. Yeah, so those are my notes.
Okay. I didn't prepare any videos. Should we see if we can find like any of these bands performing live or something?
Sure. Try to find the Smugglers.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
I mean, you can definitely find the new pornographers or the Evaporators.
Yeah, I mean, the Evaporators would be interesting. I have no interest in the new pornographers.
Yeah, look up the Evaporators live, and I'll point out Nardwuar to you.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he's a singer.
Okay, we'll start out. And yeah, let's start with Evaporator. What was the name of the song on here? Maybe I can find this one specifically. Oh, Half Empty Halls, right? I don't know if they've got it live anywhere.
I mean, you can type in Evaporators live. You don't have to watch this.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, here they are. April 22nd, 2017 in Vancouver. In-store performance. Oh, it's a very small little store here. It's like a full set. Let's see what songs they play. Okay, how about this? This is a song called Addicted to Cheese.
Nice.
That should go well for Wisconsin, right?
There's Nardwuar.
The singer?
Yeah.
I mean, that's sick.
Yeah. It's his vocals are a lot more high pitched than I remembered them being.
Yeah.
On the comp, but that's just him singing live.
Well, and they're obviously, I mean, got a few obviously middle-aged guys here. That's fine, but this is definitely, I mean, past the prime of youth at the very least. This is just 2017, but okay.
Well, Nardwuar's still going strong, and he asks about the most obscure things, and he always really freaks out his guests, or whoever he interviews, by asking really obscure questions about stuff that only they know.
Okay, let's check out at least part of this video. This is Rapper's Mind Blown by Nardwuar.
Tyler, could you please tell us Canada? Is your mom half Canadian?
Yeah, her. What the fuck? How do you know this shit? Yeah, my mom's mixed. Yo, shit. What the fuck? You with the feds, nigga?
What exactly is going on in this photo right here?
Oh, whoa. Good godness. This is middle school, and I was probably at the school taking a selfie.
Own a tobacco field in North Carolina. What's going on with that?
I do. That's crazy. That's funny. I do. I have some land in North Carolina that I knew it was gonna be weird. I knew you were gonna ask me freaky ass questions.
And he never reveals how he knew that stuff about them.
So he's just a super creepy guy.
North Carolina that often, so I don't really.
He's not super creepy. No, he just.
Over there. That's so funny.
If someone found a picture of me from middle school and then came and asked me about it, I'd be like, "What's wrong with you? You're kind of creepy."
Know stuff how do you know stuff like that? He was right on the floor to scare me.
People about this VHS cassette right here. I was curious, did you put this out?
Oh my God. This is what the fuck I've been trying to find. My Smoke Fest Volume 1. This is the first one I ever put out, cuz. Look, this is the first one.
Like, and every time they're like, how do you know that? He's like, oh, well, you're whatever the name is. We got to know.
Okay.
That's like to say this line. Kind of.
All right. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's Nardwar for you.
Okay, here are the Smugglers live at Gilman.
Oh, nice.
In January of 2017.
Is Gilman still open?
I don't know. I don't know if they survived the pandemic.
Kind of sound like Husker Du.
Oh, do they? I still haven't listened to them. You've talked about them before, but
Husker Du.
Yeah,
I have.
Yeah, some tweet that you disagreed with, and it had something to do with Husker Du or something, and I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Some jabroni said a different band is the Husker Du of our generation. I was like, no.
And who is the Husker Du of our generation?
I don't know. If I had to pick one, I'd say Tenement.
Tenement, okay. Again, I have no idea what's going on.
From Wisconsin.
Right. Of course. All right, well, the only other thing I've got is I enlisted the help of one Mr. Buttermuffin. I wanted to record a cover of one of these songs with him, but we just could not break it. We tried a number of different ways. We wanted to cover Jarhan, and we couldn't figure it out. So what he ended up doing is he ended up recording a song he's calling Jarhan's Revenge, which is I guess Jarhan's response to the Immaculate Machine song about him. And so he sent me this audio file of him and his guitar, and then he asked me to add drums. So I went ahead and I did that. So this is Jarhan's Revenge. Here we go.
My name is Jarhan, don't tell me what to do. All my problems always start with you. Don't tell me what I want, don't tell me what I got. I'll blow my nose and cover you with snot. Jarhan. Jarhan. Jarhan, tomorrow's fine and leave my place alone. I'm ignoring you and walking on my phone. Stop trying, I don't want to change. Being so obsessed is annoying and strange. Jarhan. 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 Jarhan, go away, stop bugging me all the time. You never listen when I tell you I'm fine. I'm not part of your immaculate machine. I'm just trying to be a normal human being. Jarhan.
That was so sick.
Yeah, I thought he did very good. I don't know where he came up with the idea. I couldn't tell if he's actually covering any part of the actual song. I just added the drums. So
that was a nice little surprise.
Yes. All right. Any final thoughts about Mint Records?
No. Like 4 out of 20 isn't bad.
I'm pretty sure that's what people say about our podcast at the end of each season, so I guess that's fair enough.
Right.
Okay, well, yeah, stick around for our conversation with Grant Lawrence from the Smugglers coming up next.
Hell yeah.
All right, welcome to the Zeitgeist Lab Collections podcast, Grant Lawrence from the band The Smugglers. Grant, how's it going?
Hey, Alex, thank you very much for having me. Great to be here, and great to be able to hopefully tap into your curious and odd fascination with CanCon.
Okay, perfect.
Which most people don't even, most people outside of Canada don't even know that term, because that's a government term from many, many years ago in our socialist country.
Okay, right, yeah. So I think that's maybe a good starting off point is I do know of that from, I listened to a podcast, it's formerly called Blink 155. It's now called the 155 Podcast. It's hosted by a couple of Canadians, and they will often talk about CanCon, which is where I learned about the term and like this kind of legal definition you're talking about. So we were talking a little bit off mic before we started recording about CanCon and how it's become more prevalent in my life. As someone who is, from Canada and, has made Canadian content, do you feel like Canadian content is becoming more prevalent on the global scene, or have I just been missing out for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been prevalent to a certain degree. I mean, obviously, the funny thing about CanCon is sometimes with the radio shows that I do at the CBC, I have been called like Mr. Canada or Mr. CanCon. And CanCon actually started in 1971, the year I was born.
Okay.
Obviously standing for Canadian content. But I think that CanCon has been prevalent in various ways for many, many years. It might seem more of an infiltration for Americans, but I think most obviously it's been through the arts, like comedy. Some of the biggest comedians of all time that are huge in the States are Canadian. I think the show SCTV that was around in the 70s and 80s was a precursor to a lot of the comedy, a lot of the sketch comedy that you would later see in the States, and pretty much everyone from SCTV. Eugene Levy, who's still huge with just the wrapping up of Schitt's Creek. Martin Short, who's just incredible still, and Andrea Martin and John Candy, all people that came from that show and went on to huge, huge things. So I think comedy's been really big. Everyone from, Jim Carrey to Dan Aykroyd, the list is like Norm Macdonald. It just seems to never end when it comes to comedy. But
Right.
And then music has obviously been huge too. Especially like in various forms, like whether it's big rock stars or whether it's, indie rock. Like when I was doing the CBC Radio 3 podcast, which was a big international hit for the CBC, that was in the early 2000s. And there was a ton of Canadian music exports at that time, like bands like Broken Social Scene, Metric, The New Pornographers, Arcade Fire, Feist, all those bands became really, really big internationally. And so I don't think CanCon is anything new. I think you're just out of it.
Okay, that's fair. That's perfectly reasonable. So, but like because you were in the band The Smugglers, and now, like you said, you're kind of a media personality. From what, your experience being in a band and witnessing other bands, is the dream to make it in America? Like we've had some other guests who are like, yeah, that's like the Canadian dream is to make it big in America. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is in a way. Obviously, America is like the dysfunctional kind of drug addicted, gun obsessed big brother to Canada. This sort of meek, well behaved little sibling, dressed in a toque and a warm jacket, and you're just down there and like flip flops and a tank top, just, shooting at things and getting wasted. And, and we're just up there going, ooh, don't do that, please. And so, but yeah, like the dream always has been, I mean, all those comedians that I just mentioned all made it big in the States, like they all moved down to Saturday Night Live or to Hollywood or whatever. Schitt's Creek is actually one of the exceptions. That started as a CBC show and it ended as a CBC show, but it got picked up by Netflix and really exploded. But that was pretty much a 100% Canadian production from beginning to end. So that was pretty cool to see that have its massive global success. But yeah, I mean, when I was in a band in the 90s, I was on Mint. The band was on Mint Records in Canada, and Mint Records was doing its best to be as international as possible. But the really, really key thing for the Smugglers was always to be affiliated with an American record label. So in the early 90s, we were with Pop Lama Records out of Seattle, the other pop from Seattle, not Sub Pop. But Pop Lama, Young Fresh Fellows, Fastbacks, Posies, Presidents of the United States of America were all on that label. And then in the mid-90s, we signed a Lookout from Berkeley, California, home to Green Day and the Mr. T Experience and the Queers and Screeching Weasel. And that's where our career really took off in the United States. We toured the States more than anywhere else. I wrote a book about this called Dirty Windshields. And that's where we spent all our time was touring in the USA. And a lot of Canadian bands that don't have that opportunity end up what I call doing the Canadian bounce. They bounce back and forth between Victoria and Halifax or Victoria and St. John's, Newfoundland. And they just tour back and forth across Canada and they never go south. But for us, it was always about getting into the United States. And we had tons of great shows in Salt Lake City as well. Some of our most unhinged shows were in Salt Lake City. Something about that conservative culture you got there. Kids just want to rock.
So is that accurate? Because I've heard plenty of bands say that Salt Lake City is like one of the craziest places to play. And I'm like, I don't know. Are you just saying that because I'm in Salt Lake City and you're in front of our crowd and you don't want to say, oh, Salt Lake City fucking sucks?
No. There was just put it this way. I think with the Mormon culture in Salt Lake City, which is pretty, tightly buttoned a lot of the time with all the rules around what to do and what to drink and what you can have and what you can't have. I think that creates a kind of a footloose type atmosphere where a band like ours or a band like the Mr. T Experience or the Queers would come to town and we would do a show there and it would be like someone set off a grenade. Like the kids, it would always be all ages shows and the kids would just... The places would be packed and the kids would just go absolutely nuts. And you wouldn't see that to that degree in Denver and you wouldn't see it to the degree in Reno where both places, the kids have it all. Reno pretty much the exact opposite of the regulations in Salt Lake. Okay. And I don't even know if these sorts of regulations in Salt Lake still exist, like with the alcohol and all that kind of stuff. But it did in the 90s and we didn't know. But the one thing we had going for us in Utah was that our agent, Margie Alban, was based in Salt Lake City. That was her base of operations. And so we always had great shows there. And we always hung out with her and stayed with her. And she was great, and her company was called Do It Booking, and she did a lot of the great punk rock and rock and roll bands from the 90s, all based out of Salt Lake City.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Mint Records, because this episode is specifically, we're trying to talk about Mint Records. I found that that's a lot to unpack in one episode. Mm-hmm. So for instance, our first season, we talked about Drive-Thru Records because I grew up as like a huge Drive-Thru fan, and we talked about that record label extensively, like album by album for 20 weeks or so. And I've never really heard of Mint Records. Well, that's not fair. I've heard of them, but like I never really dove into the catalog or anything. So I'm like, well, we'll talk about this label for one episode and see what we can kind of discern. And I found that I was completely confused by what maybe Mint Records is. So like I checked out your band, and like the sound of your band, that's kind of what I thought Mint Records was exclusively, like more like just a pop punk label. But then I was listening to other bands. Specifically, we listened to like the 20-year anniversary comp, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of different sounds in this band. It doesn't seem like they're pigeonholed into one genre or anything. So like what can you tell me about Mint Records, the history, what it means in Canada? How does it compare to something like Drive Thru Records, Vagrant Records, like some of those American pop punk type labels? Yeah,
I mean, the funny thing is that Mint sort of fell into pop punk. And this is timely because 2021 is Mint Records' 30th anniversary. The label was founded in 1991, and 1991 was a very, very pivotal year in music culture, and it's pretty much the year that everything changed. Nirvana's Nevermind came out in September of 1991. And the music scene has really never been the same. I mean, Nirvana broke what used to be totally underground only into the mainstream, and punk followed, Green Day followed. Green Day did even bigger. And so to start a record label in 1991 was actually, an indie label was actually really good timing. Sub Pop was founded in about 87, 88. So they had a kind of a 3-year head start. And Mint was pretty much based on Sub Pop's kind of eye for design, continuity, and customer service, like with their singles club and all that. Vinyl, we were being told in the late 80s and early 90s that vinyl was, by the music industry, that vinyl was absolutely dead. No one should be touching vinyl. But again, bands like Nirvana and Green Day changed that because they said, well, we love vinyl and we demand that our major label albums come out on vinyl. So that was really cool, I thought. But so, yeah, with Mint Records, it started because it was 91, and 91 was a grungy year, that the label kind of started out as a grunge label, a sort of Seattle wannabe grunge label with bands like Windwalker and Tank Hog that were very grungy and dark and had a lot of fuzz and male dominated. And but the focus of Mint was to be just like Seattle was very focused, Sub Pop was focused on Seattle. Mint was going to be very hyper local. And then hopefully break those bands out across Canada and around the world. And so those grunge bands did okay. And then everything at Mint changed in a huge, huge way when, kind of on a whim, the guys at Mint, the founders, Bill Baker and Randy Awada, decided to put out a record, a single by the women that were associated with Mint. So Randy Awada's sister, whose name was Robin, and Bill Baker's girlfriend, whose name was Lisa Marr, had a band called Cub, lowercase C-U-B. And they were a kind of antithesis, if that's the right word. They were like a polar opposite of the male-dominated, heavy-duty, depressing, rain-soaked grunge flannel sound that was huge at the time. Cub were sunny, upbeat, indie rock. Lisa Marr sang with a smile in her voice, and they did songs about picnics and hot dogs and just like, there was darkness beneath the lyrics, but on the surface, it just seemed like this ray of sunshine cutting through the grunge murk. Okay. And that was put out just on a complete whim. And all of a sudden, Cub took off like nothing the label had experienced. And I think that was about 93 when Cub came along.
Okay.
And every Cub record that they put out subsequently after the first record did better and better and better and better and better. And all of a sudden, Cub changed the label completely. And the label went from being this kind of dark, grungy thing to this sort of twee indie pop label.
Mm-hmm.
And those Cub records were selling like crazy. I had a job at Mint Records at that time in the early 90s, and as kind of basically an underling or a helper guy.
Okay.
And I remember when the Cub records came out, we had a row of record stores in Vancouver, and I was literally like 3 or 4 times a day carrying in my arms crates, boxes of CDs to what we called Record Store Row. The Cub CDs were selling that fast. It was mind-blowing how incredibly successful they were. Like they were shot out of a cannon. And what was weird is because they were so opposite to grunge, they were also being picked up on radio, like commercial radio was playing Cub, and Much Music, which is our equivalent to MTV, picked up Cub. And then American College Radio picked up Cub. And their albums did huge in American College Radio. Like I think they went up to very close, if not hitting, I think they were in like the top 5 of the CMJ for a couple of records. So then the Smugglers came along and got onto Mint, and that sort of solidified that kind of pop punk direction. And then Gob, another very successful Canadian pop punk band, got on the label as well. Then Mint formed its sort of coalition with Lookout Records, and that's where we started doing sort of cross-border shopping when it came to bands.
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about Mint's success.
And like being on Mint, especially it sounds like you were kind of one of the earlier ones that was more in like the pop punk vein. Like was there a camaraderie among the bands, or was maybe based on what you're telling me, was there like maybe some infighting between like, well, no, this is a grunge label or not? Or like how did the bands get along? It's
a good question. I think Cub's meteoric success was pretty obvious to everyone. And there was actually a really good community. Like the Smugglers were and are very good friends with Cub. I consider Lisa Marr still to this day one of my best friends. We're very close, even though she travels all over the world. When she's in Vancouver, we see each other and we do things. And so like the two palliest bands were Cub and the Smugglers. We toured together a lot. And then Huevos Rancheros came along from Calgary, and they were an instrumental trio, and they fit right into the Mint thing. They were sort of more on the garage side of things, more on the Tex-Mex kind of Quentin Tarantino instrumental thing. But because of the success of Pulp Fiction, which kind of put surf rock back into the mainstream, Huevos Rancheros really benefited from that. And they were landing like big commercials, and they were getting their music in all sorts of movies, and they were getting nominated for a Juno Award. I think that was Mint Records' first Juno Award nomination. That's our equivalent to the Grammys in Canada. And so there was a community there, and there was also Gob that were kind of like pop punk brats. Like they were really good, and they had really great albums that sold very, very well. They came along sort of right at the same time as Rancid, and the lead singer of Gob, Tom Thacker, who went on to play with Sum 41, he had a mohawk at the time in the early to mid 90s. And I swear to God, just by association of Tom having a mohawk, their records sold like crazy, but their songs were really good too. They had really good pop punk songs. So they were one of Mint's big bands in the mid 90s. They didn't break too much in the States, but they did really, really well in Canada. And then a woman that was around Mint for a while. She was the drummer in Cub at first, and she also dated Dave from the Smugglers. That's how she ended up in Canada, was Nico Case from Tacoma, Washington. And Nico turned out to be just a real pistol and incredibly talented artist, and has gone on to be nominated for Grammy Awards for her solo career. And she actually ended up saving Mint Records in a way in the late 1990s because there was a huge crash in the music industry in the late 90s. It was kind of like, if you've heard of the economic term boom, bust, echo, the boom was in the mid 90s. So that was, and that was throughout the music industry. I mean, the mid 90s was a huge time with, Nirvana and Green Day being the leaders. And there was a trickle down for pretty much every alternative punk band that would sort of fit into that category. There was a trickle down for everybody. Like, records sold more, bands were getting signed like crazy. And then it dried up. It dried up at around the end of 97 because everybody overextended themselves. The major labels signed way too many bands looking for the next Nirvana or Green Day or whatever, Pearl Jam, whatever. They just way oversigned. So there was a huge bloodletting at the major label level of all these bands getting dropped. And that trickled down to the independent labels too. And I remember in Canada, Mint's distributor was called Cargo Records, and they went broke in 98. And when your distributor goes broke, that is who you send all your records to.
Right.
So they had hundreds of thousands of Mint records that they had already sold, but they didn't have the money to pay us.
Oh, no.
And so that was a huge... Mint almost didn't survive that year of 1998. I left. That was the year I left the company. I went to work at the CBC. A lot of bands got dropped. But the one saving grace that year was that Nico Case came along and said, you know what? I think I want to make a solo record. And she did make a solo record. And that record featured a duet of Nico Case and Carl Newman. And Carl Newman at that time was on a sub pop band called Zampano, but they were tanking because they were more like Burt Bacharach than anything grunge. And sub pop was having a very, very hard time around this time too. I remember the cover of the Rocket magazine in Seattle was called, the headline was Sub Plop with a question mark, because they diversified. They went from grunge and they diversified. Now the sub pop was eventually saved by that diversification by bands like the Shins and the Postal Service. Well, what was going to save Mint Records? It was the siren Nico Case. And so her first solo record, The Virginian, did really well. And then her next couple of solo records did even better. And then Carl Newman decided to, because Zampano was a disaster sales-wise, we all loved them, but they couldn't sell a record to save their lives. Carl Newman decided he wanted a more bombastic kind of rock band, more like, sort of Fleetwood Mac meets Cheap Trick, or like a supercharged Bell and Sebastian. And he remembered singing this song with Nico Case, and he said, hey, I'm forming this new band. And that was the New Pornographers. And so their first album, Mass Romantic, came out in 2001, I believe, or 2000. Came out in 2000. And that was Mint Records' first Billboard success. I think it hit, I don't know, it was somewhere up there on the Billboard chart. And it also won a Juno. So that was Mint Records' first Juno Award. And then that saved Mint. And so because of that, by the 10th anniversary of Mint Records, there was about, at least 30 albums in the catalog and tons of singles, about as many singles. And they had survived the downfall of the late 90s, which was the bust.
Right.
And they were into the echo period, which was the rebuilding, thanks to Nico Case and the New Pornographers. And all of a sudden, they had some of their best years in the early 2000s, thanks to those two artists.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So that kind of brings me to like the next question that I had, and I think you've spoken a little bit to it because the music industry started to change at that time. But since like this echo period you're talking about, the music industry has changed even more. Like now, you talked about 91 would be a great year to start any sort of label, especially a grunge label. Now it's 2021, and the music industry is such a different place, and record labels have to go up against things like streaming. How has Mint Records dealt with that from your perspective?
Well, I think they've struggled like anything, but they are a legacy label. You know, they've been around for 30 years, and now, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, after 10 years, they had 30 releases. I mean, I think the 90s was definitely, you know, Mint's golden age,
right? But
they are still putting out, you know, a ton of records, and you know, I mean, they still have a big roster. I mean, you know, Nardwuar and the Evaporators are on the label. Some of the other bands that have done well recently on Mint have been artists like Kiwi Jr., a really awesome indie rock band from Prince Edward Island that ended up getting signed to Sub Pop. So they got scooped. They got scooped from Mint. Faith Healer, another really, really cool indie band. But what happened was that essentially Mint became a tried and true indie rock label. Like the pop punk got left behind, and they became much more of a melodic indie rock label. They move with the times. I mean, indie rock had its massive decade in the 2000s, specifically between around, you know, but from around 2002 to 2000 and maybe to the year 2010. I mean, there was some really, really big indie rock stories, the New Pornographers probably being one of the biggest. But yeah, I mean, they've continued to do well. I mean, they've recently released records by, like, there's an iconic Canadian artist named Sukyin Lee. They recently released a record by her and Peach Kelly Pop from LA on the label. So there is a lot, but I would say, I mean, total, I mean, they may be looking at around, I'm not totally sure, I maybe look up there, but maybe around 100 releases now after 30 years.
Yeah. I actually just Googled it, and it says they've put out over 150 releases.
150. So there you go. Yeah. I mean, most recent releases in like the last, you know, year or so, bands like Tough Age, Waves, Wares, I should say, Sukyin Lee, Jay Arner. Those are the current Woolworm. That's the current roster. But I mean, I'm not that involved with their current roster anymore. But I think Mint was pretty much a big deal in the indie scene in the 90s and 2000s. And I think now in the 2020s, my goodness, I think now in the 2020s, I think it would be considered more of a boutique label, if that would be.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just impressed. Randy Iwata is the last man standing. He still runs Mint Records. So he's run Mint from day one.
Wow. That's truly impressive for sure.
Yeah.
So moving away from Mint Records, I guess the last kind of question I would have for you here is, you mentioned you moved to the CBC, you host the CBC Music Top 20 now. So as like a personality in media in Canada, what is it like to kind of witness, like, I guess, the music industry in Canada, and like how, like, witnessing Canadian content from the media perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because for a while there, maybe about 2-3 years ago, and to this day, to a certain extent, I think there was a point where, you know, on a major pop scale, which is usually quite above my level, but now that I host the CBC Music Top 20, there is a lot of mainstream artists on there. And so I've gotten into that world, which was previously quite foreign to me. But there was a point where like the top 5 artists on the Billboard chart for the first time ever were all Canadian.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, like pop stars, like it was like Shawn Mendes, Alessia Cara, Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, and Drake or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds
So
right.
all of those artists are Canadian. And, The Weeknd is like the biggest pop star in the world and making new music. And so that CanCon thing lives, but not a lot of those artists are, I think The Weeknd lives in Bel Air now. I don't know where Drake lives. I mean, they all have their love for Canada. The Weeknd grew up in a neighborhood called Scarborough, a tough neighborhood in Toronto, and Drake was a child TV star in Canada on a show called Degrassi Junior High. And then, but they all have their connections back to Canada. Like Drake is a huge Raptors fan. The basketball team in Toronto. And then Justin Bieber just recently announced like some sort of deal with Tim Hortons Coffee, which is Canada's most famous coffee. So, there's all that's the kind of big CanCon world I'm involved in the CBC Music Top 20. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, Canadian music continues to break, but when we say break, we do mean internationally, we do mean in the States.
Yeah.
And a lot of Americans, I find, don't really know or care that Shawn Mendes, Drake, The Weeknd, Alessia Cara, or even like that hit song from about, 10 years ago now, Call Me Maybe, is Canadian. People, music fans don't really care. It's more the Canadians who care. They're like, that, like, we like to claim what is ours, and we want credit for it. We want Americans to recognize what is Canadian and give us credit for the popularity of it. Pretty much if you're speaking to a Canadian and you bring up something just out of the blue that might be Canadian, chances are the Canadian will say, that's Canadian.
Right.
Whereas, an American will not, be talking about whatever, whoever, like Michael Jordan, and say he's American. It's like, yeah,
obviously,
yeah. But if you talk about like Wayne Gretzky, you point out like he's Canadian, and that is our little sibling syndrome,
right? Okay.
to want to point out what is CanCon as much as possible, whether it's a sports star or a comedian or a musician or anything at all, even something in outer space like the Canada arm. We need credit so much for that we actually put our country's name on this thing that extends from space shuttles and fixes stuff out in outer space. We wrote our country's name on the side of it.
We're just so desperate for credit, right?
Yes, we're so desperate for credit, just in case like someone is passing by in outer space, they'll see, oh, Canada made that. Okay,
right, okay.
Because they're desperate for credit.
Okay, well, look, this has been super insightful, and I really appreciate it. Before I let you go here, is there anything in particular you want to plug? I was kind of poking around your website. It looks like you are a busy man with a lot of different projects, so...
Yeah, I do. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, I wrote about in my book called Dirty Windshields, the Best and the Worst of the Smugglers Tour Diaries. And that dives into a lot of this stuff about Mint Records, Lookout Records, what it was like to tour in that era, kind of the era that sort of crested pre-internet and internet, and what it was like to do it yourself, like with a phone and a staple gun type thing. And I'm talking rotary phone attached to a wall.
Right.
And that sort of lifestyle. So I always like to put that book out there. It came out a few years ago, but it's one of my favorite things that I've done. And so I guess I'd put that out there. But I've got lots of stuff. It's all at grantlawrence.ca, books and music and CDs. And I put out a kids book this year. And there's going to be like a 30th anniversary Smugglers re-release next year. And so there's always lots going on. I was a little bummed that Mint Records didn't do more for their 30th anniversary. For their 20th anniversary, a book came out written by a writer from Spin Magazine. The book was called Fresh at 20 by Caitlin Fontana. And it was a really great book. It's sort of an oral history thing. And then Mint did a really big event. They did a big gig where a bunch of bands reformed for it. The Smugglers didn't, but a bunch of bands did. And there's just been nothing for the 30th. And that could have something to do with COVID and the restrictions and stuff like that. Right. But I was a little bummed not to see any sort of retrospective or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because like I said, I checked out the 20th anniversary compilation they put out, and I was a little surprised there wasn't like a 30th anniversary one.
Yeah,
so.
Maybe I'll bug them again. There's a month to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Grant, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. It was great to talk to you.
The Zeitgeist Lab Collections podcast, hosted by Brian and Alex, edited by Poli-Sci Alex. Executive produced by Pan Blurry for Itchy Grundle Podcast.